South Dakota rental laws govern the ins and outs of lease agreements and rent-related issues. From evictions to the rights and responsibilities of landlords and tenants, it's important to understand these rental laws to make sure your tenancy goes smoothly. In this video, we'll give you an overview of what the state law says about lease agreements, required disclosures, security deposits, and evictions. We're eForms, the largest online database of fillable legal forms. Check out the link below to access a fillable lease agreement template. Let's first go over the basics. What is a lease agreement? A lease agreement is a rental contract between a landlord and a tenant. Depending on the type of agreement, whether it's a month-to-month lease, a standard lease agreement, or rent-to-own, both the landlord and tenant are bound to the specific terms regarding the length of the lease, termination, and more. Because a lease agreement is legally binding once it's signed, breaking the contract can result in hefty fines or even legal action. Next, let's take a look at required disclosures. In South Dakota, there are 2 disclosures that the landlord must provide to the tenant as part of the lease agreement. Methamphetamines. If the property was ever used to manufacture meth, the landlord must inform the tenant of this fact. Lead-based paint disclosure. Federal law states that landlords must provide this disclosure for all buildings constructed before 1978. Now let's take a closer look at security deposit laws. In South Dakota, the landlord is legally allowed to ask for a maximum of 1 month's rent from a new tenant unless the landlord can prove that the tenant will pose an extra danger to the premises. As for returning the security deposit back to the tenant, the landlord must send the funds within 14 days from the lease termination date. If the landlord makes deductions to the security deposit, the tenant has 45 days to request an itemized list detailing the deductions. Finally, let's cover South Dakota's eviction laws. In South Dakota, a landlord may evict a tenant under the following requirements. Non-payment of rent. If the landlord gives notice to pay or move out, they can start eviction 1 day after rent is due. Without the notice, they must wait 3 days. So landlords can either 1. Give notice and act immediately, or 2. Wait 3 days without notice. Non-compliance. If the tenant breaks any portion of the lease other than late rent, the landlord can issue a notice to quit that mandates that the tenant must cure the violation within a reasonable time frame. Termination. If the landlord wants to terminate a month-to-month lease for reasons other than non-payment or non-compliance, they must provide 1 month's notice to the tenant. Want to learn more about South Dakota rental laws? Visit the link in the video description for a comprehensive breakdown on all things related to lease agreements, evictions, and more.